my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm going to cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by ErgoBaby. Founded in 2003, ErgoBaby has pioneered the gold standard for comfortable, ergonomic, soft-structured carriers. Their commitment to providing parents with the foundation to thrive has launched the company into creating a broad range of award-winning products that fit into families' daily lives seamlessly, comfortably, and safely, where function and quality are not compromised. In 2020, they launched Everlove by ErgoBaby, a first-of-its-kind baby carrier buyback and resale program, a sustainability effort to support families and the planet. You can use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR for 15% off at ergobaby.com. At the end of the episode, I talk with Shelby, a Birth Hour listener, about her experience using the new ErgoBaby Bouncer, as well as her experience using some of their baby-wearing carriers. All right, before we get to today's episode, I just want to mention our Know Your Options online childbirth course. If you are pregnant and looking for childbirth education, this is the course to have you covered for all of the different ways that birth can go. So we are not going to just prepare you for an unmedicated birth. We're also not going to just prepare you for an induction. We're going to cover everything, including planned cesareans, unplanned cesareans, and then we're going to take you through postpartum and get you feeding your baby and healing and taking care of yourself. So go to thebirthhour.com/course and you'll see a detailed outline of all the modules and what is offered there. There's also a really great FAQ section where you can get some of your questions answered. Things like, can I get it covered by my HSA? Yes, and things like that. So again, thebirthhour.com/course. And as a listener of The Birth Hour, you can use the coupon code 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. We would love to welcome you into that community and get to know you on our bi-weekly Zoom calls and in our private Facebook group. So again, thebirthhour.com/course, coupon code 100OFF. Okay, last thing, a huge way to support The Birth Hour is by becoming a Patreon member. You can go to patreon.com/birthhour to find out more, but joining at that just $5 a month level, you get a discount if you do an annual membership. Is a huge support for the podcast, and it allows you to find great community. We have an amazing private Facebook group just for our Patreon members. It is going strong for 8 years now, maybe. So you can search the archives for all kinds of great answers to questions, and then you can literally put in any question and you will get support and friendship and community. So head to patreon.com/birthhour and join that community. You'll also get access to all of our archived episodes. Find out more at patreon.com/birthhour. Today's birth story guest is Kathleen, and she's going to share about overcoming her anxiety about the medical setting by using hypnobirthing and a doula and having a really positive hospital birth. She also talks about challenges with breastfeeding postpartum. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome to The Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Good morning, Bryn. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we get into your story, can you tell listeners just a little bit about you and your family?
Absolutely. I live in Austin, Texas, and I've lived here for almost 10 years now with my husband, who I met while I was living in Germany, and I convinced him to come live to the sunny land of Austin. So yeah, we've lived here for about 10 years. Just in the past year, we welcomed our very first daughter into the family, where we'd previously just had a fur baby, but he loves her as well.
Oh, good. That's always good.
He's a little jealous, but he manages.
Good. All right. Well, I know that you want to share a lot about kind of how you were feeling during pregnancy and preparing for birth. So let's just go ahead and start with your pregnancy and how that went.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll maybe start just a tiny bit even before pregnancy, as a lot of thought went into before I even decided to get pregnant.
Okay.
I'd had a history just of a lot of medical anxieties. When I'd go get a blood draw, I've been known to faint just from kind of panicking in the moment, or when getting a vaccine, just everything surrounding dentists to regular checkup and things caused me a tremendous amount of anxiety. So the thought of all of the medical appointments and ultimately the birth was terrifying to me. And I couldn't get past that thought in my head for a long time that, really left me feeling like maybe I don't want to have children. And then that started to shift, I'd say, as my kind of 35th birthday was getting closer. And I read a really fabulous book called The Baby Decision that helped really just to position that each phase is really just a phase. And so, it helped me to think, I can overcome this in the end for something that could be a really great journey. And so, my husband and I decided to start a family. I'd say pregnancy went pretty typical for me. I had all kinds of varying symptoms that, were just very normal for pregnancy, ranging from, nausea in the beginning. I work at a computer all day, so some kind of carpal tunnel things. And then really towards the end, just a little bit of back pain the last few weeks, just due to the position that she was in, that magically went away as soon as she was born. So that was all pretty smooth. So during pregnancy, I really focused on just trying to stay as active as I could, going for walks every morning, working on kind of my strength training, obviously modifying that more and more and more as pregnancy progressed. And I think that really did help me stay feeling well. And really only in the last kind of, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks did I have to stop doing most of that, just due to where she was positioned in my pelvis. Along with my morning walks, I would also listen to sometimes a meditation or some positive affirmations around birth to really help me start to shift my mindset and focus. As in the beginning of pregnancy, I would wake up in kind of a panic, anxiety mode, just even thinking about the act of having to give birth at the end of all of this. But I truly believe listening to those positive affirmations so religiously helped me to have a new talk track to myself in my head and gave me inner confidence and calm that, I will get through this, and I will, in the end, just surrender to the process, because no amount of worrying is necessarily going to change what the outcomes are. Of course, much easier said than done. So for pregnancy, that's kind of nothing wild stands out to me too much. I'd say it was pretty standard from all the range of symptoms that you can experience in pregnancy.
Right. Okay. So knowing that you were, kind of nervous about the upcoming birth, let's talk about, what types of things you did to prepare, what kind of birth you were planning, that sort of thing.
Yeah. At the recommendation of a friend, did actually a hypnobirthing course out of a company in the UK called the Positive Birth Company. And at first I was like, what is this? This hypnosis, this, I don't know about this. But really, that's where a lot of the positive affirmation work came from. And it was really about learning the science behind how your body is truly built to do this. And I completely nerded out on that and found that really helpful just to understand, it's not like you're pushing yourself through a really hard bike ride or workout and you need that same stamina. It's a whole different set of things at play when you're going through the act of birth. And that helped me to think about it differently, because I think at first I viewed it as, oh my gosh, I can barely ride my bike for 30 plus minutes or whatever it is. How am I going to do this? But it really is not comparable at all. So the hypnobirthing course really helped. My husband took that with me as well to listen in. I also did work with a therapist more specifically on some of my medical anxieties, even around blood draws and things like that. And I think that helped also give me some of the tools just to manage those in the moment feelings of panic. And because that was part of my fear that, during the birth, what happens if I do have a, kind of this moment of panic and then I do faint during the birth, and that created its own cycle of anxiety. But the work through the therapist plus the hypnobirthing course really helped to shift my mindset and get me into a new headspace. And I was really honestly probably waffling up till close towards the end about, can I really do an unmedicated birth? Do I want to do an unmedicated birth? And I had equal fears at any given moment of actually having an epidural. That doesn't come without risks. How would I feel, feeling more trapped in a bed versus, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can withstand the pain that everyone talks about. And that felt equally scary. So I was back and forth on it for a long time, and ultimately decided, again, through reading just the science of it all, that I do think for me, having an unmedicated birth felt in many ways less risky or scary. It was really the pain component that seemed the scariest. And I told myself I'm going to go in with an open mind and try my best and let unfold what unfolds. And so I know a lot of people say you really need a kind of conviction reason in your head to be able to make it through an unmedicated birth. And I don't know that I always felt I had that leading up to it. And I think partly I, in my head, remained open just because I didn't want to be, super frustrated on day of if things needed to be changed. And, it can create a lot of tension, right, when you're resisting a path that maybe is not possible. And I'd say the other thing that made a huge difference just in kind of pregnancy prep leading up to labor is my husband was a huge support as well. And so he really, he believed in me that I had the strength and the ability to do that, and just was a constant positive force around me. And really, his confidence in me also gave me confidence and calm as well that it was possible. The other thing I did also do as part of labor prep is I found a doula. And I think that was absolutely instrumental as well to ultimately having a very peaceful birth. And partly the reason I wanted to find a doula is I thought having a familiar face in the medical setting on the day of the birth would make me feel calmer. And I very much think that it did, because, you don't know what nurse you might be assigned that day. You don't know what doctor might be on call that day necessarily.
Right.
And so I had the most wonderful doula named Joni from the Austin Birth Company here in Austin, Texas. And she was just a wealth of knowledge and support in so many ways to me, but also extremely important in supporting my husband during the birth as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I just recorded with someone else who made that observation that your doula is kind of the only person that you might get to choose to be in the room other than your partner, or that you might recognize their face. So that was a big part of your decision making in getting a doula, because I haven't heard that a lot before.
Yeah, probably the first thing I even did when getting ready for prepping for birth is find a doula. I knew very early on that I wanted that. I've known before, when I'm getting a blood draw from someone I've seen before, I am calmer than if it's a whole new person. So highly, highly recommend a doula. I think they can be so helpful. I've just from friends have had different stories. There are so many amazing nurses out there, but, maybe someone's having a bad day and it wasn't an amazing experience for them. So,
Right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about how labor started for you.
Yeah. Labor started on Sunday afternoon. I'd been doing acupuncture throughout pregnancy just to help with some of the various pregnancy fun symptoms that you get, helping to sleep better. And then I also think it did help to manage anxiety. I actually had mostly pretty minimal anxiety kind of attacks during pregnancy, and I thought it would be a lot more. So I actually had an acupuncture appointment that Sunday afternoon, and they had at that point started to do some of the labor points as I was near my due date, but actually at that point past my due date. And so, went home that evening and definitely started to have some kind of first contractions. But nothing picked up a whole lot really over the next day. It did a bit more as the night came, which I came to learn from lovely doula Joni, that's a thing, something to do with oxytocin and melatonin, that labor can pick back up at nighttime, even if it slows down during the day. And that continued through all of Monday and also into most of Tuesday, which was not so fun at the time, just how drawn out it was. I didn't really know early labor could last so long like that. But by Tuesday evening, things were getting underway. We were in constant communication with the doula team, and they were, again, just fabulous. And there was a couple of them from the team that were actually helping us. And we were in communication about when should we go to the hospital, because knew that, wanted to have a hospital birth in the end. And so we decided to go around 6 p.m. To the hospital after really trying to wait as long as possible, being at home with my mom and my husband there helping me just manage through contractions. So we went to the hospital around 6 p.m., had to wait in the waiting room for a little while. That was also a little unexpected for me, but then got through triage, and I was actually already 6 centimeters dilated when they checked me in triage. So I felt very pleased with that because that had been my plan to try to labor as long as possible at home. And so from there, got assigned my dedicated nurse who was absolutely lovely. She was a lovely nurse living in the U.S. from Canada. And Joni set up a beautiful hospital room with, really dim lights, little twinkle lights around. And I continued just to labor for, if you ask me, I thought maybe like an hour or two more, but it was more like 9 hours. But really, truly, your mind goes off into labor land in another place. And so I didn't have really a sense of time. Joni did such a terrific job kind of acting as an interface with the medical staff. So really, I was left very uninterrupted for most of the time, which I think helped me to stay in that labor land zone and really just very focused. I didn't exactly expect to use this, but I had an app called the Gentle Birth app that is also a hypnobirthing type app, but you can use it as a contraction timer. And during the contractions, the voice will come on and give you some kind of positive affirmations and just guidance. And I hadn't really thought a whole lot about using that super intentionally, but very interestingly, that became my lifeline. And every time I would have a contraction, I would, where's my app? Where's my app? And with the app and those words, it just kept me super focused. It allowed me to really sink into my breathing and just surrender to the process. And I just did that again and again and again. At a certain point, they had me kind of labor on the toilet just to keep contractions moving and progressing for a while. And I definitely felt a shift in the type of contraction, and I could hear the noises that I was making shift. But, this is my first time doing this. I didn't exactly know what was happening. And so at a certain point, they're like, hey, why don't you get up for a second? Let's check you. And they, bless the nurse, got down with a flashlight and looked up underneath, and there's the baby's head coming out. And so the nurse, I think, didn't quite expect that at first and panicked a bit for a moment. She's like, don't do anything. I'm getting the doctor. And I was like, okay, it's all good. So the doctor came in and got all her gear on and things. And I remember so clearly she told me, don't push right now. And I said so clearly back, well, I can't. I have no contraction right now. It's fine. Why is everyone panicking? And then before I know it, she was honestly born probably like 2 minutes later after the doctor came in. So really felt like it happened extremely quickly.
Wow.
And yes, I think probably, I had been more in that pushing phase, right? While laboring on the toilet for maybe closer to in totality, like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But she came out pretty smoothly in the end. And then my husband and I kind of both just stared at her and we didn't know quite what to do. And the nurse was real sweet. They're like, you guys can touch her now. But, we were just in awe staring at her and like, wow, she's really, really here.
Wow. So how long was the labor at home and the hospital and everything all told? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'd say early labor started Sunday afternoon. So Sunday afternoon, and she was born ultimately Wednesday at 3 a.m. So I'd say active labor was probably about 9-10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then, whatever the math is on that, 2 days, I guess, a little under 2 days for early labor.
Yeah. Sounds like your body was doing a lot of prep work before active labor hit.
It was. Yeah, it was. And I do kind of wonder, in thinking back on it, if I was still maybe somewhat in my head resisting some of the contractions and things in early labor, I interestingly think I actually coped much better being at the hospital, which I was terrified still to go to the hospital from the medical anxieties. I remember literally crying as I'm, saying, I don't want to go to the hospital as we're leaving the house. But I actually think I coped much better there where I could just, sink into feeling like I'm in my final place where, right, birth is going to happen. I'm surrounded by, all the people that can help me if I need any help. And so yeah, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that, but yeah.
Okay. And then how was your hospital stay and postpartum recovery?
Yeah, hospital stay was also so nice. All the staff were just really lovely there and just very sweet and helpful, and would come in to check on me and baby every few hours and really just answer all of our little new parent questions that we had constantly. I only stayed, I guess, about 24 hours. I did ask to go home early. Just we thought that we could have a little bit more rest and recovery at home. It is hard in the hospital, right, to get as much rest when they come in and check on you fairly frequently, which is nice and comforting, and definitely nice to have those experts there to ask all your questions. But it was also really nice to be able to go home just after, it was about 24 hours that we were there and able to go home the next day. And then moving into recovery and just breastfeeding fun, that was not as easy as I'd say in some ways the birth ended up being. She had a lot of latch difficulties from the very beginning, even in the hospital. So I probably honestly breastfed her 3 times in the hospital before I just couldn't for the pain. And she had already started to create bleeding nipples, bless her. And so I started hand expression and pumping right away from the beginning. And we also saw some lovely lactation consultants to help us with her latch, and also ultimately a physical therapist as well to help the baby with her latch. And also a dentist who in the end diagnosed her as having a very severe tongue tie, which they released. And the release did help her to improve her latch. While never quite, perfect, it did help. So yeah, I knew breastfeeding would not be easy from the many stories I've heard from others, but I also didn't think it would be as difficult as it was. And then I'd say the other factor that came in is I really never ever made enough milk for her. Probably at most, it was 25% of what she needed. And that was after doing all the things I saw, I think 3 different lactation consultants in the end. Did the whole power pumping, did supplements, did all these things. And in the end, the lactation consultant diagnosed me with insufficient glandular tissue, which I'd never heard before, but basically means you don't have enough of the mammary, the milk producing tissue to make milk. And so, if you even doing all those things, it wasn't going to necessarily matter in the end. And actually, that was quite, in the end, I'd say relieving in so many ways to hear that, because then it felt like there was a reason, like not just like I was trying all these things and nothing was working.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy all the things that we go through to feed our babies, honestly. Like just hearing you talk about bleeding nipples, which is like not an uncommon thing, but before having kids, like if someone talked about their nipples bleeding, you would be like, well, that's insane. And we just power through it and keep feeding our babies,
Yeah.
But I'm glad you were able to get some answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the lactation consultant even telling me, when she had her kids, I think it was maybe 20 years ago, she, called one of her sisters crying because she had bleeding nipples and so much pain. And even though that's not that long ago, her sister told her, that's just part of it. You just power through. And
right.
Thank goodness today there is help for women out there to, conquer some of those problems, or at least get support in those problems. Not even something to be conquered, just to be supported.
Right.
Because it can feel so isolating and alone, and like you're not doing something that you should be able to do, right? Like, why shouldn't I be able to feed my baby, which is essential to keep them alive?
Yeah.
But for me, honestly, it was very relieving to have in the end kind of that diagnosis. And so my decision in the end was to pump as long as I could kind of mentally sustain it and give her those antibodies that, hopefully are helping her in some way, even though it's maybe not as much as other babies would get. And I decided to stop pumping when I went back to work, as for me personally, that just felt too stressful combined with the job schedule that I have. And honestly, again, people talk about breastfeeding being so magical. And for some people it is. For me, it wasn't. It felt like baby girl and I were usually, arguing with each other half the time because her latch was so tricky. So doing all the crazy acrobatics to position her. I had like 100 pillows around me, all the things. I honestly didn't get the feeling that she loved it either, because I think it was obviously harder for her too, with her latch challenges and the milk flow just not being really enough for her either compared to drinking out of her bottle. And I was lucky she would go back and forth pretty easily from her bottle to the breast. Never a problem with that from the very beginning. And then also, in some ways, the silver lining of it in the end was that, everyone could help feed her so much. So my mom would feed her. My husband, God bless him, would feed her most nights, honestly, because he would see that I just really needed rest. And he would get up and feed her. I might be getting up at a different time to pump. And so he's like, there's no sense in you just getting up as well when you've just been up to pump. Let me get up and feed her. And so that really, really helped in recovery, just to have that extra sleep.
Yeah.
That I think the sleep made all the difference. And I think a therapist told me if you could aim to get kind of a 4-hour block a night, that just makes a big difference, which I know all new moms, you kind of like, how am I supposed to get a 4-hour block when the baby needs to eat every 2 hours? Like something's not designed right in this human system here. But I think everyone's got to balance what is best for them. And I do truly believe there is a balance to be had between the mother's mental well-being and the baby's health. And I think it's easy for us to feel like we put ourselves always second, or even we sacrifice ourselves, right, for these things we do for our kids. And that's what, as a protective mama bear, we do and want to do in many situations. But we can't forget, in my opinion, the importance of our own mental well-being, because I know I show up way better for my family when I am in a better mental headspace versus sleep deprived, resentful, angry, impatient when it's otherwise.
Right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a great support system and you guys did some amazing problem solving. You make it sound like, it all worked out really well, but I know it was really hard, I'm sure, in the beginning to find your way through that.
Absolutely. There were many tears shed in the first few weeks.
Right.
And I think just trying to be accepting of those hard moments and just reminding myself that they won't last forever. I can look back on it much more fondly now and laugh about some of the things that were not funny at all at the time.
Totally.
But it really does help. And I would say I did that more intentionally as I had a kind of a little journal exercise I came across during pregnancy that was really a postpartum reflection exercise. And it actually made a lot of difference to be able to just, one of the questions was, what is easier today than last week or yesterday? And if I hadn't asked myself that, I wouldn't have actually realized that, well, yes, maybe breastfeeding today was still not ideal. It was 1000% easier than it was last week. And so that was just a really nice, give yourself a moment to recognize the small wins in progress that has happened and not kind of always hold ourselves to this perfect standard that can be. I am definitely a type A perfectionist at the heart. So a lot of lessons there.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. You've mentioned some really great resources throughout and things that you did. Anything you want to highlight here at the end?
Absolutely. I think number one is a doula. There's lots of doulas and companies around the US, but I would absolutely recommend that as a resource. Whether you're having a medicated or unmedicated birth, I think just having someone in the room with you the whole time who has seen this hundreds or maybe even thousands of times makes a huge difference. I think for most of us in today's world, the first birth we're seeing is our own birth.
Right.
And, even my own sister, she's younger than me, has just from seeing my experience, birth doesn't happen like it does in the movies. And that's often our only exposure to it initially growing up. So having a doula who can help is one huge recommendation. I really did enjoy the hypnobirthing mindset or approach to preparing for birth. And there's lots of different courses out there. And the two I kind of used were the Positive Birth Company out of the UK, as well as the Gentle Birth app. I think there maybe is a book as well, but both of those I found very helpful. And if you're on the fence, and I guess maybe most people are decided you're listening to a birth podcast, but I did really enjoy the book, The Baby Decision. If you or any friends are still unsure about whether you want children or not, that was very helpful.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those. And then where's the best place for people to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, I'll give you my email, Bryn. That's probably an easiest place to find me.
Okay.
Also, if you're in the professional world, there's always LinkedIn as well. But yeah, email's probably easiest.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Kathleen.
I appreciate it, Bryn. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Okay, now I'm going to talk to Shelby about the Ergo Baby Bouncer, as well as some of her favorite baby carriers from Ergo Baby. Hi, Shelby. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today to chat with me about Ergo Baby.
Hi, Bryn. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, before we get into our conversation about Ergo Baby, can you tell listeners just a little bit about you and your family?
Sure. My name's Shelby. I live just outside of Portland, Maine. I'm a maternal fetal medicine sonographer. I have 2 kiddos, a 2.5-year-old boy and a 3-month-old little girl.
Okay, so I feel like you're right in those ages where any kind of device that can be helpful is welcomed. So let's start by talking a little bit about your experience with baby wearing and how that's impacted your motherhood and postpartum journey.
With my first baby, I used a wrap a lot in the first couple of weeks, and I liked it. It was just kind of hard to maneuver, and it was like kind of hot also to wear. I was kind of sweating in it a lot. And I tried to use I also had the Ergo 360 that I tried to use, but it had the infant insert, and I just couldn't figure it out until he was a little bit older. So when he was a little bit older, we used the Ergo 360 all the way until he was 18 months old. Probably used it every single day.
Nice. Yeah, the infant insert was tricky for me too with my first baby. I think we kind of just gave up. And then now they have all these ones with the built-in ability to go from young ages all the way up to toddlers. So people don't have to worry about that as much. But yeah, I can feel you on that one.
Yeah, it was just a little too complicated for me. But this most recent time, I think I heard about it on your podcast, the Ergo Embrace. I went ahead and bought because my due date was in July. So I was like, it's going to be hot. Maybe I'll try something a little cooler. And it has been awesome. I use it every single day with her. And I was able to use it. I think we started using it like 2 weeks postpartum. And it's really easy to use. My husband can use it really well. He would never try a wrap. So this one has been really nice for him to use as well.
Yeah, it kind of has that feel of a wrap, but with the ease of just being able to buckle it on and go, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's really cozy. She loves it. It's the only place she naps during the day, so I use it a lot.
Yeah, you've got a baby wearing napper. I can relate to that as well.
Oh, yeah.
So did you get the cool air mesh one with it being a summer baby?
Yep. So it was really nice. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. I feel like that's nice even for in the winter when you have your heater on and you're doing those indoor naps. You don't want to be sweating on each other too much.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like especially postpartum, I'm always kind of sweaty anyway, so it's been really nice to have it.
Awesome. Okay. And so I know you also recently got to try out the Ergo Baby Bouncer, which is their newest product. So tell us how you've incorporated that into your life.
Yeah, it's been super nice because we're also potty training right now. So just having a space for her to be that I can put her down and have her safe and comfortable has been really helpful. I really like it because it's really supportive. It like supports her head and her neck and her hips really well. She just looks really comfy in it.
Yeah, I love that Ergo Baby, that's like their whole thing, right? The ergo part of Ergo Baby is ergonomics. And so they're really focused on making sure you're not just strapping them into something, but that they're going to be sitting in it in a way that's good for them and comfortable. And is she still small enough that you're using that little newborn cushion in it?
I actually just took that out to try out to see what it would be like without it. And both ways look really comfortable. So with the newborn insert, it just looks, I don't know, even more cushioned and supportive, but she's also really supported without the cushion in there too.
Yeah, I feel like that little cushion's probably best for when like the head support is needing a little bit extra. But
Yeah.
How old is she now again? You said a few months, right?
3 months old. Yeah. So she's just starting to like lift her head and really want to look around and stuff. So.
That's awesome.
But I like this bouncer so much more than my other bouncer because in my other bouncer, she'll slide down and hunch over, and like I'm always having to adjust her and like push her back up into it. So with this one, I don't have to adjust her at all. She just stays put and she looks really comfy.
That's awesome. Yeah, and they're really, really cute too. They're just kind of like fit in with your decor without being, you know, a bunch of little characters or something like that.
Yeah, I know. It's really visually appealing too.
Well, I know you said you had a toddler, and these bouncers go up to 30 pounds. They can use it as a little TV set, but you said your kiddo's just a little bit out of the weight range.
I know. I think the weight range says up to 29 pounds, and he's just now 30 pounds.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So I haven't tried it on him, but I think it's probably better too because he's really obsessed with all the baby things.
Oh my gosh.
Trying to keep it separate.
Totally get that.
Anyway.
Yeah, I remember my older kids were like getting into the Extra saucer and stuff, like just thinking it was hilarious. But yeah, I love that it could be a little like seat for them in front of the coffee table or the TV or something for a little bit when they're older, and it doesn't take up a ton of room like some of those big like armchairs that they make for toddlers that our grandparents bought our kids. And now I'm like, where am I supposed to put this?
Yeah. No, it fits in really well to the regular living room space for sure. I'm excited to see how it works as she gets bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like it has like a really strong base on it too. So that with older kids around, you don't have to, or even like a dog, you don't have to worry about it getting knocked over or something. That was always my concern.
Oh yeah. Yes. And he'll go over and he'll like lean on it and push, kind of bounce her while she's in it. And it seems really sturdy. It hasn't tipped over or anything.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm such a big fan of these types of things because, like, we all know you don't need a whole lot with a newborn, right? Like, you just need to be able to have a safe place for them to sleep and a way to feed them. But it's so nice to have some of these just extra conveniences. Like, for me, I just loved having a safe spot to put the baby in the bathroom so I could take a shower or even just pee, especially if you don't want to have, be baby wearing in that moment. So I'm glad that Ergo Baby is kind of added this to their rotation of things helping life be a little bit easier with babies.
For sure. I would not be able to get ready in the morning right now without it. So it's very helpful.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with me about it. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that the bouncer's working out and that baby wearing has been a big part of your life as well.
Yeah. Thanks for talking with me, Bryn.
Thank you so much again to Kathleen for sharing her story. I will have her contact info on her show notes page, which you can find by going to thebirthhour.com and just searching for her name in the search bar. And then be sure to check out ergobaby.com and use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR for 15% off. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.